Hey there, and here is video 2 on solving elimination, but with multiplication. So far we've graphed and done elimination, but now we're going to be continuing doing elimination, but with multiplication. This is to answer this question, well, what happens when the coefficients are not the same? For example, 2x plus 2y equals 6 and 3x minus y equals 5. We still want to solve for x and y. We can't use any other methods because they're both in standard form, so we still want to use elimination. Well, what we're going to do is kind of change the steps up a little bit so that we end up with the same coefficient. So here are our steps. It's going to look very similar. Step 1, line up your equation. Step 2, determine which variable to eliminate. We want the variables that have the same coefficient. That would be ideal, but these won't have that. So we use step 3. We're going to multiply the equations and then solve. So we're either going to multiply one of the equations or both of them, and you'll see that in just a moment. So step 4, we're going to plug it back in just like before and get the other variable. And then the most important part is to make a coordinate out of it, x comma y, because the solution is where two lines are meeting. So let's look at our first example. That was the same one we read off just a moment ago. We need to decide, well, first we need to make sure they're lined up, and they already are, which is awesome. Then from there, we're going to choose a variable. Try to make things as easiest as possible. We want to maybe just multiply one of the equations instead of both. So I'm going to look at the y's. But we have two choices. We can eliminate the x's or you can eliminate the y's. Let's go ahead and eliminate your y values. When I do that, I see I have a number 2 and I have a y. In front of that y is a 1. So I have 2 and negative 1. So I'm going to have to come up with, well, what do I need to multiply to get them to have the same numbers? And this is when we use our least common multiples. The least common multiple between 2 and 1 is 2. So we have to say, all right, well, if I multiply the top by 1 and the bottom by 2, and I distribute it, I'm going to end up with the same number with the y. So you see that? 2y and 2y? And you have to keep in mind, when you distribute through with these numbers, it goes through the whole equation. So 2 times 3 and 2 times that 5. Well, now I can see that the two y's have the same coefficient. Now I'd say, all right, they're different signs, so I'm going to add them. When I add, those two y's cancel. I'm left with 8x is equal to 16 when I add those two. So when I divide both sides by 8, I get x is equal to 2. So then moving on to step 4, I'm going to substitute it back in, and I'm going to find or determine what the value of y is. You have two options here. You can put it into the first two equations, or you can put it into one of your new ones. Let's put it back into the 2x plus 2y is equal to 6. So let's see what happens. If I do 2x plus 2y equals 6, I'm putting the x in. I get 2 times 2 plus 2y equals 6. I multiply, subtract, and divide. So I see x is 2, y is 1, and I create a coordinate. But remember, it doesn't matter which one I use. If I want to put it into the 3x minus y equals 5, I can do that as well. So let's go ahead and see what happens when I do that. Well, in this case, it's going to be 3 times 2 minus 1y equals 5. So I multiply, subtract, and divide. Do you see how I'm getting the exact same thing? X is 2, y is 1, so I create the exact same coordinate. So it doesn't matter which one you put it back into. You could have even put it back into 6x minus 2y equals 10, and you've still gotten y is equal to 1. Okay? All right, let's do a different one here. So I have x plus 4y equals 7, 4x minus 3y equals 9. Once again, we want to make sure they're lined up, and they are, and then choose a variable, again, making things as easy as possible. What I'm noticing here is that the best option here is to choose the x's, because I only have to multiply one of the equations. Because between 1 and 4, the least common multiple is 4. So I'm going to multiply the top by 4 and the bottom by 1. When I distribute through with the 4 at the top, I get 4x plus 16y equals 28. On the bottom, I'm multiplying everything by 1, so it doesn't change it much. So I have 4 x's now that are the same number. I have same signs, so I'm going to subtract. 16 minus negative 3 gives me 19. 28 minus 9 is 19, so I divide to get 1. Once again, we're going to plug it back into either of those equations. It does not matter which one you plug it back into. Let's put it into the x plus 4y is equal to 7. What I end up with, this is now y equals 1, so I have to make sure I put it next to the 4. Multiply, and I subtract. And it's not necessary to divide here. So I have two values, x is 3, y is 1, so I get the coordinate 3, 1. Okay. Last but not least here, 7x plus 3y equals 100, 6x plus 10y equals 160, line them up, we're good. Choose the variable, try to make it as easy as possible. In this case, there is no easy as possible. So what we're going to have to do is just choose to either eliminate your x's or choose to eliminate your y's. So let's go ahead and choose to eliminate the x's. Between 7 and 6, the least common multiple is 42. A nice rule of thumb, take the bottom number and multiply up top, top number and multiply it on the bottom. If you had noticed that and happened in the same thing happened in the other ones. So now we have to make sure everything on the top gets multiplied by 6, everything on the bottom gets multiplied by 7. And as you can see now, the x's both have 42. So, same signs, means I'm subtracting, so subtract everything. 18 minus 70 is negative 52. 600 minus 1,120 is negative 520. And divide, I get y is 10. Now we're going to have to plug that back into any of those 4 equations that exist. It doesn't matter. So let's go ahead and substitute into the 6x plus 10y. Remember, this is a y equals, so it's going in for y. Multiply, subtract, then divide. So I get the x value is 10. Put them together as a coordinate, and I get 10, 10. All right, make sure you've taken notes in the survey. Bring your questions to class tomorrow. We definitely get those addressed. Here's your survey. And again, make sure you're writing down any questions you might have. See you tomorrow.